An independent editorial defense analysis focused on Australia's strategic environment.
The strategic trajectory of the Australian Army has shifted. It has moved from a philosophy of expeditionary lightness to one of mechanized survivability. This transformation was crystallized by the selection of the AS21 Redback for the Land 400 Phase 3 program. This decision represents more than a procurement of 129 infantry fighting vehicles. It signals a divergence. It marks a departure from the prevailing logistical consensus of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and places the Australian industrial base on a distinct, albeit solitary, path. While the immediate focus often rests on the tactile specifications of armor thickness or cannon caliber, the broader implications are far more significant. They concern the integration of Australia into a nascent Asian defense industrial complex, a juxtaposed against the established interoperability of the European theater. At the core of this strategic calculation is the tension between platform capability and fleet universality. The European market is currently galvanized by the exigencies of the war in Ukraine. Consequently, it has largely consolidated around the CV90 platform manufactured by BAE Systems. This vehicle has achieved a ubiquity that grants its user nations significant advantages. From Sweden and Norway to the Netherlands and now the Czech Republic, these nations benefit from shared logistics, collective training, and rapid cross-border maintenance. By opting for the South Korean-designed Redback, Canberra has prioritized specific performance metrics over the safety of numbers. The Redback, weighing in at approximately 42 tons, reflects a doctrinal alignment closer to the Israeli approach to heavy armor. In this view, crew survival in high-threat environments supersedes the logistical ease of lighter, more air-transportable platforms. This suggests that the Australian Army anticipates a future operating environment defined by high-intensity, lethal engagement, rather than rapid stabilization missions requiring strategic airlift. The establishment of the Hanwha Armored Vehicle Center of Excellence in Geelong transforms the acquisition from a simple import transaction into a foundational element of sovereign capability. However, this industrial sovereignty introduces a complex variable regarding long-term sustainment. Unlike the CV90, which benefits from a vast, distributed supply chain across Europe, the Redback supply chain is currently bipolar. It is anchored only in South Korea and Australia. This creates a vulnerability known as the orphan fleet risk. Should the geopolitical environment isolate the Korean peninsula, or should production priorities in Changwon shift, the Australian facility in Victoria must possess not just assembly capacity, but the depth of manufacturing engineering required to sustain the fleet independently. The viability of this industrial node, therefore, depends heavily on external validation. This makes the ongoing tender in Romania a matter of direct strategic interest to Australian planners. Romania is currently adjudicating between the CV90, the ASCOD, and the Redback for a requirement exceeding 290 vehicles. If the Redback secures this contract, it would validate the Australian investment. It potentially integrates the Geelong facility into a global supply chain and distributes the development costs of future upgrades across a wider user base. Conversely, a failure to export the Redback beyond Australia and South Korea would leave the Australian Defence Force bearing the full financial burden of the system's life cycle. This scenario would mirror the challenges faced with previous unique platforms, where the cost of bespoke upgrades becomes prohibitive due to the lack of economies of scale. Consequently, the industrial success of the program is not guaranteed solely by domestic production. It is contingent on the platform achieving a critical mass in the global market. From a technological standpoint, the divergence between the Redback and the CV90 highlights a trade-off between combat provenance and architectural modernity. The CV90 operational history in Afghanistan and its current high-intensity usage in Ukraine provide a wealth of empirical data regarding its survivability and utility. This feedback loop allows engineers to refine the platform based on kinetic realities, rather than theoretical modeling. The Redback lacks this pedigree. However, its clean sheet design allows for the native integration of advanced subsystems that are often bolt-on additions for older chassis. The inclusion of the Iron Fist active protection system and the Iron Vision helmet-mounted display suggests a prioritization of situational awareness and active defense layers that are integral to the vehicle's electronic architecture. This emphasis on advanced electronics brings the analysis to the question of interoperability. While the chassis is of South Korean origin, the lethality systems are heavily westernized. The decision to utilize the T-2000 turret creates a hybrid system that may offer a distinct advantage in digital integration with United States forces. The sensors and fire control systems align with the broader Western digital ecosystem. This potentially mitigates the mechanical divergence from NATO standards. It suggests that Australian planners view interoperability increasingly through the lens of data links and sensor fusion, rather than shared engine parts or road wheels. The capacity to network with American aviation and maritime assets is likely deemed more critical for the Australian strategic geography, than the ability to swap track links with a Dutch or Norwegian mechanized unit. The weight of the platform also dictates the operational mobility of the force. A 42-ton vehicle imposes strict limitations on the bridges it can cross, and the landing craft that can deliver it to a littoral zone. This physical reality forces a reconsideration of the amphibious capabilities of the Australian Defence Force. The heavy armor profile implies that once deployed, these units are intended to hold ground and absorb punishment. They act as a decisive hard power element rather than a rapid reaction force. It necessitates a logistical tail capable of supporting heavy fuel consumption and managing the wear and tear associated with high-weight tracked movement over the difficult terrain of the Indo-Pacific archipelagos. Furthermore, the financial dimensions of this program extend beyond the initial $7 billion Australian dollars acquisition cost. The total cost of ownership for a heavy tracked fleet is historically underestimated. As the global user base for the CV90 continues to expand, the per-unit cost of spare parts and upgrades for that ecosystem is likely to decrease or stabilize. In contrast, unless the Redback secures significant export orders in Eastern Europe or the Middle East, the cost curve for Australian sustainment may remain high. This creates a budgetary tension. Funds required for future midlife upgrades might compete with other emerging priorities, such as long-range fires or maritime denial capabilities. The selection of the Redback over the CV90 is therefore not merely a technical preference. It is a defining strategic bet. It assumes that the protection of the soldier is paramount. It assumes that the domestic manufacturing capability is worth the premium of logistical isolation. And it assumes that the future of armored warfare requires a level of digital integration that justifies a departure from established legacy platforms. It positions Australia as a distinct technological actor in the region, capable of producing high-end armor, yet simultaneously reliant on the unproven potential of a newly forged supply chain. The success of this endeavor will be measured not on the test track, but by the ability of the Australian industrial base to sustain a heavy, complex system over decades without the safety net of a widespread global alliance of users.